I'm sorry, Jeremy. All right, hello everyone. Welcome to the Amherst County Board of Supervisors meeting. This is the call to order. Let the record reflect it is December 6, 2022, and the time is 3 p.m. Our first order of business is the approval of the agenda. Are there any additions or deletions or changes that need to be made?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to propose an addition to the agenda. I'd like to add item 6 and move everything else down, old new business, discussion of county staff volunteering for fire departments, particularly whether or not they can hold an officer position.
All right, is there anything else? If not, I will make the motion that we amend the agenda to add old new business, as Mr. Martin just stated, under item 5. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we'll have the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance. Dear Heavenly Father, we come before you today to ask for your guidance as we go about our business today for the County of Amherst. We ask that you give us the wisdom and the knowledge to make the right decisions that are pleasing to you. We ask that you protect our police officers, our sheriff's deputies, our EMT providers, and our military that provides us safety throughout the world. Dear Lord, we ask these things in your name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, next we will move on to the citizen comments. Is there anyone wishing to speak at this time? You could just state your name and address for the record, please.
Y'all ought to know me by now. My name is Mike Bryan, and I'm under Jimmy's district, the 3rd district. And reason I'm back over here again, I know it's December the 6th, taxes already been paid. I done paid my taxes, so I won't be delinquent over here. But I called the Commissioner of Revenue and I asked that y'all get into discounts on taxes. And they said no, don't get none on personal property. But they did tell me that they asked for a bigger discount, y'all wouldn't give it to them. So that, I went back and I said, well, check my taxes again. I got a Forerunner, 2019, I paid $931 last year taxes. This year went to $938. Got a Suburban, last year was $652. This year went to $682. Now I know used cars are high, but my taxes shouldn't be going up on used cars. So Mr. Pugh told me to check with Campbell County on the personal property tax. I did. I called up and talked to Tammy, got a number right here. Tammy, I said, what are y'all doing to help the people earning the taxes this year? She said, well, we cut the taxes in half, 50% of what the cars are worth. And she said, we're going to take a percentage off of that. And she said, that's going to bring it down to $2.11. I said, well, how much is $3.49? I said, they did give us a 20% discount, but it ain't enough to help, and that's taxes high. But that led up to what I saw on TV now. I know all of y'all got a TV, and you probably saw what Bedford done. One of the lowest taxes around, their taxes is lower, $2.35. And they are giving 30, if you go up and pay in person, Justin, newsman, I can tell you, I got a son-in-law, they're knocking 33% off of your bill if you go and pay it in person. And I went to the news thing. The reason taxes were so high now, they extended the pay to January the 31st because the taxes are high. Everybody knows the tax is too high. Y'all know it, I know it, everybody knows it, but we need some help from it. All the other counties, and don't think I'm mad or fussing with y'all, but the other counties did do more than y'all did, and to help the people out. Because look at here, they extended it to January the 31st to help people pay for it because Christmas is coming on and everything. There's single mothers out there, There's people, the widows and stuff, everybody else, the money's tight around December, and y'all know it, and everybody else knows it, but they extended that. And then they said the board voted to get, I copied this off the news, so you know, hearsay, 33% rebate. They're going to give $8 million back to the citizens. Now this is, you think of it, this is a county around us, got the lowest tax rate. They're giving $8 million back to their citizens. Now, that tells me they're thinking of the citizens. They're telling me right there that, and one of the supervisors said, we're going to do something about this. We're not going to wait 3 or 4 months. We're going to do it right now. And Supervisor Tommy Scott said, don't let this happen again. So they was concerned about the people, and that's why I'm here. I'm a little concerned. I think that another guy said, Robert here said, we're going to work on this rebate right now. Now, other counties are doing something. I just think that y'all was voted in to do the best job you can for the people. But you didn't tell them, when they voted you in, you didn't tell them, say, hey, I'm going to try to help save you money. I'm going to do this for you. When you tell them, when you got voted in, you was voted in, people put respect for you. They said, hey, I trust in them people to do the best for me. And I know, and I said shit this while ago, and I look at all these people asking money from y'all. I know it's a lot of money goes out of here. But as a taxpayer today, you got to think of these, the taxpayers and everything else that are paying all this high-priced tax and everything. And so that's what I think. Now, I went through my neighborhood. I didn't go through all neighborhoods, just went through mine. It's 20-some houses on my street, and Jim is my district man, but Jim, ain't all these names yours on here. I'll tell you that to your face. Ain't all of them on here. But every person, I walk down that street, and I know some of you probably know them. I know Jeremy probably knows some. I didn't have no problem nobody signing. I got names here signed through this book. I could have filled this. If I went through every neighborhood in this county, they'd have filled this book up like nothing. Because I walked in a business over and I said, hey, I'm working on, I said, I'm going to go down, let's talk to them about the taxes again. They said, give me the book, I'll sign it. And they were all in your district, Jimmy. It was other districts, they come and signed it too. People's not happy with the taxes. I know that y'all say, well, we done what we could do. No, I think he could have done a little better because these other counties are doing more than Amherst. And I just think y'all might not like my personal opinion, might not like what the same, but hey, I could fill these books up. I just went through my street. It's 20-some houses on it. The only 3 houses didn't sign was the ones on vacation. They weren't there. Everybody else, when I come up to the door, I said, you want to sign this? Just give it to me. They didn't ask the question. And then you know what they told me? They said they ain't going to do nothing. I said, I don't know whether they're going to do anything or not. But you know what? I'm a very persistent person. I don't give up on nobody. I don't care what. When I'm doing something, I'm going to stick with it. And I think, well, y'all done anything this year or not, you should be thinking about next year. If you don't, when the election comes up again, stand up and say, hey, I'm not going to do nothing for y'all. I'm just going to get my position and that's it. But I'm going to think the county wants people that's going to look out for the citizens. I know you put out a lot of money, but I think y'all need to look out for the citizens too. And look, if all the money would have came in this place that normally comes in there from car taxes, you still had the same amount of money. I think some counties are taking advantage of these used cars. They're taking advantage of it because cars have gone so high. And you know yourself, the cars ain't worth it, but they've gone that high because J.D. Powers said this is the price of this car. He didn't say how many miles on it or nothing. He didn't say this or that. But I think that y'all need to look back and say, hey, J.D. Powers might be setting this rate, but this rate is not fair for my people in the county. My people need some relief. There's people that needs release from this tax burden. And I think y'all are the ones that done it, because the commissioner lady said, I don't call her name, but she said, y'all was the ones that set the price. Now, I don't know who rejected, whether it was Dean Jones or who it was, whether it was a board here, but she said they just didn't give me enough discount. So, and I heard, I went and watched the thing last week, and I seen what David said, that people have been calling him about the taxes. And I understand that. And hey, I don't blame him for calling you.
Mr. Bryant, I hate to shut you down, but we've got to move the meeting on. I've gave you ample time. I appreciate what you said. I think we've all got the picture of what you want and what you'd like to see be done going forward in the future. And I appreciate everything you said, and I understand where you're coming from. And if you could just wrap your comments up for us real quick.
All right, I will. Oh, yeah, I did time that lady was over here last week. She did talk over 5 minutes and something. I do my work. I'm very persistent on what I do. Yeah, I think y'all should know this coming year, if you don't do nothing for the taxpayers this year, you need to do something this coming year. Exactly what you need to do. And you need to tell them, and if you have to have a special meeting or whatever you have to do to help bring these taxes down. So that's what I'm thinking. We need to do something about these taxes. Now, hey, you ain't got a crowd out here full here, but I could bring people easy. I mean, if y'all have a special meeting, I'll have them here. But I got names here. If you want them, just citizens here, they're not happy with it. So that's my opinion.
Thank you. All right, anyone else
Yes,
wishing to
me.
speak, please come forward.
Hi, this time you can hear me. I'm June Bryant, and I'm speaking on behalf of all the people that lives in the Amherst County area. You 8 of y'all that sit behind that desk is responsible to help us, and you know you are. Every one of you are responsible. I'm looking straight in the face of everyone that will look at me straight in the face, eye to eye. Because I'm not afraid to look at you straight in the face. It needs to be heard. They need you to hear it, and your ears open up and take the cotton out of it. This is a struggle on a lot of people, a lot of women that are single mothers that will not be able to purchase presents because of these taxes on their automobiles. That's wrong. I don't know how you're going to have Christmas when you've done that to mothers that doesn't have a husband to help them along the way. How about these senior citizens that did not prepare like most senior citizens should prepare for their older years? Their bank accounts aren't there. They're not big enough. Social Security is what a lot of these people are living off of because they didn't think far enough. But it was a mistake they made that they didn't think far enough. But it's your mistake, too, as a leader of Amherst County. Voting time is coming. I mean, you're going to stand and want to be put back in office, don't you? Well, let me tell you, don't stand and put little notes on your doors up for, and I know this has been recorded, and I'm glad it is. Don't expect to be elected next year if you didn't do nothing to help us, because they're going to think about it. You don't know how mad your brother lives on our street. He's even mad. He's mad as everybody else. He signed the papers, and you know he did. He signed those papers to help us out, and I thank him for that. He's standing up, and you're standing back there sitting. You need to speak up and tell people, hey, help these people out. We're not being mean to y'all. We're not being hard on y'all. All we're asking is to help us like the other counties has helped their people. Bedford County, Campbell County, all other counties has helped their people. But you act like we're nothing, but you just take our taxes and throw it up on us. And then I was out here last time, and someone made an ugly comment, well, we'll just find the money somewhere else and raise the taxes on the houses. Well, you better not start that either. You need to be fair. You give to who you want to. But how about those people that doesn't have Christmas this year? They can't afford food on their table. I've heard them say it. I'm in the grocery store with these people. I hear the elders say, we don't have money hardly to pay our bills right now because of our cars. It can't keep going. So that's all I have to say to you. You think next year, 2023 is coming up. You're going to want to be reelected. So why don't you start doing something now? And then 2023 comes, those that are smart enough to do it will do it. Will be elected because you kept your word. When you're voting, don't wait till the last minute. We're going to do something for these people. We're going to do it. They're going to vote for you. They're going to vote for you if you help them. But if you don't help them, I don't think many will get back in offices because people are getting tired of it. And you don't hear as much as we hear. You may hear a little bit, but we hear a lot all over the public, everywhere we go, fussing in Amherst, how bad Amherst is. Amherst County. We should be proud of our county. We should be proud we're living in a beautiful area like Amherst is. But we should help the people. Help those that are poorer than you are. And I think you'll be a blessing to everyone that does. Thank you so much.
All right, is there anyone else wishing to speak? Anyone else wishing to speak? If not, we'll go ahead and close citizen comments, and we'll move on to the consent agenda. Are there any questions on the consent agenda? If not, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
So moved, Mr. Chairman.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Ayers. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next, we have item number 5, old new business, county staff, volunteers regarding officer positions in the fire department.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, members of the board, when we voted to change our policy and allowing our county employees to volunteer for the volunteer fire departments, we put a stipulation on it that our paid staff could not hold an officer position. I've been contacted by the Manelson Volunteer Fire Department requesting us to consider changing that. Originally I had supported that prohibition, but after thinking about it, one of the reasons we allowed our county staff to volunteer was that, one, we were saying it was a different job. Two, we were saying it was a separate agency. So after thinking about that, I'm not sure why we are, telling them who and can't hold an officer position in their agency. So I would recommend that we just leave it up to each individual agency and go from there. So.
Are there any questions?
I do have one. And, Mr. Martin, I'm sure that we've run this by our public safety director.
I have discussed it with Chief Beam, also the county administrator, and he reached out to county attorney. So.
And they're all positive?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, I want to make it clear in part of the record that I'm not going to have any part of this discussion. I have children that are in the volunteer agencies in the county, so therefore I'm not going to take part in it.
All right. I had I had talked to Mr. Martin briefly on the phone about this. He had called, and I said, well, what if you get someone in a position as an officer in one of these organizations, and, that maybe they're undermining the department, so to speak, because whatever it may be, the motive. And he assured me, at least the Amherst Fire Department, I'm sure the other departments have bylaws that allow you to remove individuals from these positions. Is that correct?
That's the way it is in Amherst Fire
Amherst?
Department, yes.
Okay. So, I guess that would be in each individual bylaw department. I would assume each would have it. I don't know that for a fact, but it seems it would be, if you had somebody in there that wasn't competent or, got in trouble or something like that, you would have the ability to remove them from that position.
Sure, that's why, again, I think it should be up to each individual agency. The request came from Manelson. Honestly, there is a member in Amherst Fire Department right now that works for an outside fire and EMS agency, wants to be an officer next year in our department as a captain. He'd love to come work for the county. The county's doing a lot of good things under Chief Beam's leadership, and but that he still has that love for the volunteer agency. So I think it's beneficial. I think leaving it up to each individual agency is the right thing to do, and I would put that in form of a motion.
All right, there's a motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. Next, we're going to have a discussion regarding the Gateway Sanitary Sewer Project. We have Mr. R.T. Taylor here from Davenport to discuss the project.
Thank y'all for having me here this afternoon. As y'all probably aware, the Amherst County Service Authority met earlier today, and we presented this same book, talked through it in pretty good detail, but I would offer up the opportunity to ask questions along the way so we can have a good discussion. I won't belabor each page, but if there's something that you need further clarification on, just let me know. Big picture, the Amherst County Service Authority, as you are aware, sort of maintains and puts projects into place, infrastructure for water and sewer. throughout the county to service the folks, and has for years in our annual pro forma plan for certain mandated projects, in particular one coming up this fiscal year 23, and then one out in 2025. And what you'll see in the materials here shortly is that the county's consultants have come back with an updated estimate for one of those projects, which is a bit higher than what's been sort of in the model for the number of years. At $5 million is now $8 million, so escalation costs have gone up. Now, that's on the high end. We believe that, based on the staff's comments, we believe that to be a bit conservative of an estimate. On the higher end, maybe it can be engineered down from that. But for now, what you'll see in the materials is based on that new escalated amount. Additionally, the county is currently considering the Gateway Sanitation Sewer Project tied to a development on 2 different parcels, but I guess they're contiguous. So we wanted to analyze, we've been tasked with analyzing how that would be funded. And there's several different sources that we'll talk through here shortly. But one would be on your base water and sewer rates that the authority levies for, monthly bills or quarterly bills, however it works. The other way is that the county, in support of the development, could appropriate funds. And then lastly, we wanted to introduce the concept of a utility service district. And let me go ahead and direct you to the presentation. If you would turn with me to page 5. I'm just going to skip through a little bit to give an overview of how this special utility service district would be set up. It's pretty simple. We've done this in a couple localities. In particular, the one that comes to my mind that I worked closely on was New Kent County. They had a existing water and sewer infrastructure. They were approached by developers to build out the Bottoms Bridge area. A special service district was created, a utility service district was created. One of the key concepts there is, and y'all may have heard of a TIF, or a tax incremental financing district. What that TIF does would create a district and actually carve out monies from the general fund. So what you're currently collecting on at your current real estate tax rate of 61 cents would actually go away from the general fund, because it would all be dedicated out of that district for a TIF, a tax incremental financing district. What we're proposing here is similar to the New Kent County utility, the Bottoms Bridge Utility District would be where it's an incremental service district, meaning that ad valorem would go on top of the county's current assessed value. So the monies that are dedicated through that special ad valorem in just that district would be applied to the debt service. You wouldn't be carving out existing revenues from the general fund. So that would be a third potential source to help mix for the development. Okay? And so that can be set up pretty readily. It's a public hearing, an ordinance. When you create this district, if you were to select or desire to create this district, it creates that flexibility to turn on the switch, so to speak. You don't have to assess that special ad valorem. If the developer is meeting the projections that he's laid out and the system, the new development is paying for itself, then you might not necessarily have to turn that switch on. But it's a way to create flexibility and invite the developer to share in that potential lagging if those projects sort of carry on, and it doesn't meet the projections, okay? Any questions on the utility service district?
Chairman, I do have a question. So this district that you propose for the ad valorem, is it exactly the same as what the developer is developing?
Correct.
Or is it a larger portion of that?
There's 2 parcels that we're aware of that would create this district, and those are where the lines would be drawn. Okay? So let's say, as the development progresses over the next couple of years, and so many units are built per year, that would increase the assessed value of that property, right? And so we're going to show you here in a second how that might look based on the developer's projections. Okay?
Tucker, you can draw the district differently than that if you wish to do so. is so long as all of the properties within the district are receiving a benefit from what the district is paying for. But I believe that what Mr. Taylor has done the modeling for is just to have those two tracts be part of the district.
Yeah, that's my question. I didn't understand why we couldn't, everybody that will benefit from this, why couldn't they be in this new district?
So we talked about this very specific example the other day. And you might have a developer that approaches you 10 years from now and wants to develop the adjacent property, right? Something contiguous to it, and they could potentially benefit. You could create and draw a new line around that new development so that if they're tying into the then existing system, then they too could assess a special ad valorem to cover their portion. But I think from what we've talked about, drawing it too big too soon could create limitations, whereas if you draw it, right-size it, basically for just the development that's being contemplated now, you're not unnecessarily creating limitations going forward. Does that make sense? Okay. So if you would, turn to page 6. Our understanding is that the developer is potentially ready to go in the next month or 2, or 3, depending. And so we were tasked with sort of assessing this under that timeline. It might push, we don't know, but the upshot would be if this project, this gateway project specifically is desirable, we might want to go out and survey the banks and find out what the interim financing would look like, what the rates, the terms could be. But what we would ultimately do at some point in the future, once the project's complete, the costs are known, that's when we would take out the interim financing with a more permanent financing over 20 years, you know. But I think the upshot here is trying to figure out, based on what you'll see in here, is do we want to move forward, number one, so that we can get the project started, or the developer can get his project started while we're getting the infrastructure put into place. So we'll come back to that in a minute. On page 7, this is just laying out the projects that are currently in the pro forma for the service authority. And we've added in there in the middle for 2023, the $3.5 million total costs. We understand that that would come down potentially based on some monies that have already been given to the service authority and potentially other grant monies that might be eligible for the projects. But for now, big picture, conservative purposes, we've assumed the full $3.5 million is borrowed. Okay? And then on the next page, page 8, this is going to get into a little bit of the numbers. I don't want to go through each detail, but what I'd like to lay out here for you is at the top section, the number of units by type, lines 1 through 5. That's information and data that was given to us directly from the developer. This is how the developer sees the units being built and sold over the next several years. For example, in 2024, there's different types of units that we have mapped out here: senior villas, market apartments, commercial buildings, assisted living, and senior apartments. All those total about 118 units in 2024, for example. If you look down in lines 7 through 13, what the Service Authority staff has done for us is dropped in the developer's projections and potential usage and water and sewer rates to give us what the annual incremental revenues would be for this specific part of the water and sewer system. So for example, in 2024, if things go to plan according to the developer, the water and sewer, the Service Authority would recognize water and sewer revenues tied to the Gateway project totaling $106,000, okay? We further haircut that because we understand that the Service Authority and the water and sewer projects it already has, or infrastructure already has, we have an operating margin, operating expenses tied to that infrastructure. We have people to run it, we have people to fix it, et cetera. So what we've done is looked at your existing operating margin. So out of 100% of revenues, roughly 55% of your expenditures go toward operations. So what we said here on the bottom line on line 17 is we're only going to give ourselves a net benefit, so revenues minus expenses equals our net revenues on line 17. So out of that 106 for the first year, we could potentially net 47,000. That would help us toward the system, toward the new projects, et cetera. That's how this is mapped out. Are there any questions on how we've set this up?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
So when you got this 55% there, and I'm just gonna look at it as if it were a business, okay?
Yes, ma'am.
So you're making your widget, this happens to be water. 55% of whatever you make is what it costs you to make that widget,
Yes,
okay? Everything else would be, quote, profit?
Yes, ma'am. Above the line. So you're still going to have,
Would be unusual for any private sector business. That's pretty daggone good.
I think it's running pretty well. I mean, we've been
I'd say
doing the
so.
annual report for a number of years now, and we've, I think it's a combination of the staff and board budgeting conservatively, staying on track. Y'all may recall a number of years ago, rate increases were held off, and people got sticker shock when the board had to do and the staff had to do what they had to do to get things back up and running. And we've been on a good path forward since, I don't know, it was like 2011 or somewhere in there, where we are going to, sort of incrementally build our finances through measured approach of increased rates. And that's how everything's been tracking since. So I think the upshot, to echo your point, the authority's in good shape. Okay, so with that said, we've got incremental revenues available to us that we've discounted to make sure we're not overcounting revenues related to the new project. That's a potential source to help us offset future debt service related to the project. This other source on page 9 is that special ad valorem on the utility district. Again, if we set up a utility service district, we're not saying we have to flip the switch and start charging the developer, or in a number of years as the units are sold, we're not saying we have to turn it on and charge the people. But what we're doing on the front end is creating the flexibility to be able to implement that if we need to. For example, the project's going along just fine. This project's paying for itself, for lack of a better way of putting it, under the current system. You wouldn't have to charge the developer or anybody who buys a unit that special ad valorem tax. On the flip side, if the development doesn't progress as expected and it slows down, the county and the service authority are putting themselves a little bit at risk developing and creating this new infrastructure for this development area, right? So all it's simply doing is creating that toggle switch to say, hey, developer, it's not going quite as planned. We're going to flip the switch this year and assess that special ad valorem so you're sharing in a little bit of that added risk, okay? Again, it's up to the county. It's y'all at the county board's discretion whether or not that additional revenue source gets triggered, okay? It's about just creating that flexibility on the front end, should you need it. If you turn to page 10, this is sort of our big picture preliminary estimated results. The rates that y'all implemented, or the service authority implemented last year, was based on an old pro forma assumption at that $5 million level for the raw water intake that we know is a mandated project and has to be implemented or started construction in '23, okay? Based on the updated estimates, we believe that project may be as high as $8 million based on Hurt & Profit's updated numbers. So if you look at the very top here, what we're saying is just to fund that additional $3 million on that project that's been in the pro forma for the past several years, instead of being 4.5% on water, it's going to have to be 5.9%. On sewer, it's going to have to be 6.9%. Okay, so that's your adjusted baseline to cover the uptick in that in that new escalated project for the raw water intake. If you then add in the Gateway Sewer Project and the development generates no revenues, none whatsoever, the developer just missed his projections altogether, and the current user base is basically paying for that additional infrastructure, what would the increases have to be? So on water, it'd be 7.2 versus the 5.9 above, and sewer, it'd be 8.2 versus the 6.9 above, okay? That's just looking at the impact to water and sewer rates as your only source to offset that increase. However, we believe it would be a blended approach between water and sewer rate increases, county appropriations to support the project potentially, right? The Service Authority issues revenue bonds, but historically, the county has always put its moral obligation appropriation back to pledge behind. It's called a support agreement. When we've done debt in the past, we've used the state pool program, Virginia Resources Authority, and they've required the county to provide that additional county support, and the county's been happy to do it to provide this backing for the service. So that's the second potential resource. Water and sewer rate increases, county support through appropriations, and then this other third opportunity or potential trigger to activate a special ad valorem just on that service district. So it might not be all rate increases, it might not be all county support, it might not be where you activate or turn on that special ad valorem, but we believe if this project is moving forward, we'll have those discussions as we get toward the spring and have our annual pro forma report and figure out how this thing evolves, how this is actually going to be implemented. So we're not asking for any action from the county today, just a sort of nod if we're going to be moving forward with the Gateway project, should we go out and start looking at the potential interim financing so that the developer can get started? Any questions?
So if you looked at the worst-case scenario, if it's delayed significantly, and then you have to spread the increase over current users, a back of the envelope, just me fiddling with it, it really shouldn't be any more than like $3 per household. Does that sound about right to you?
$3 per household?
Looking at the percentage of increases from where we are now.
Oh,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Yeah.
Understood. I think that's, let me just run it through.
Here's what, it should have been 4.38% for a water rate increase, but with the additional cost on the water intake, that's going up to 5.9%. So that's an additional cost that we're going to have to assume as the Service Authority.
That's right.
So, and the same with sewer, it was 5.38% would have been built in, now it'd be 6.9. So you're really going up from 4.38 all the way up to 7.2% on water and 8.2% on.
I just want to know how it's going to hit the consumer. That's what I'm looking for. I think it'd be about $3, but you tell me.
I'd rather,
If math is not my strong point.
well, I don't want to say yes because I didn't run that math, but I'd rather look at it on the pro forma and be able to circle back to you. But bear with me one second because I was trying to do on my calculator for order of magnitude real quickly. Bear with me. Times 2. Yeah, so it should be around $3, and you're talking about monthly basis, right? That's a rough, I mean,
Yeah.
that's a rough estimate, but.
Right. I get you. Thank you.
And Mr. Pugh, I think to your point, I just want to point out that that 7.2 and 8.2 assumes absolutely no revenues on the new development.
But the raw water intake, right, and the sewer pump station upgrades, those are accounted for by the fee increases, right?
That's right.
So, and that's on the Service Authority side.
Yes, sir.
Really, what we're talking about is the Gateway Sewer Line, which we're looking for $2.5 million. But your numbers are based on 3.5.
That's right.
Any
Just so
other
I
questions?
understand.
Mr. Chair, question for Mr. Bryant. Where does Ms. McBride stand as far as grant? I know she was looking into that.
She's looking to that. She's looking for USDA funding and how that could play a part in this. As Mr. Taylor told us in our Service Authority meeting, Mr. Taylor, correct me if I'm wrong, but that can come concurrently. You need to do this anyway to move forward. USDA funding could blend into this process.
That's right. And one of the purposes behind doing the interim financing is so that you can get started on your project, even if we don't know the final number to the penny. The projects can get started. We can explore different funding options, whether it's a USDA loan that we have to go through their process, which can be lengthy. The project may take a couple years to get completed. So all of these things can be going at the same time while we're trying to figure out how much monies we're going to get in grant funding toward the project, what USDA might give us, what the federal government or state might give us, et cetera. But if we issue the interim financing up to, let's say, the full $3.5 million, we can negotiate with the banks to say, hey, we are going to have certain monies become clear to us that we might pay this down early with and only finance permanently $2 million of it. So this interim financing gives us the flexibility to go ahead and get started and let those key variables get to evolve and get cleared up so we know what our ultimate financing level amount will be. Yes, sir.
All right, any questions? All right. So, are you done with the presentation, or is there some other things you would like to cover?
I'm good.
All right. So,
Thank you.
thank you, I appreciate it.
Want me to stay up here for questions, or you want me to go sit down?
You may want to stay up here just in case we have a question. So we had a Service Authority meeting earlier today, and there was no decision made as far as that, and I may be speaking out of order, but there were some statements made that said, you know, the Service Authority is not a risk-taking entity. It's not necessarily an economic generator, but it's there to provide a service. I took that as kind of the county, if the county wants to proceed with this project, $1 million has already been on the table. And if the county wants to proceed with this, that there could be a possible tie-in with the additional tax revenue that's going to come from the buildings to help pay off the water and sewer infrastructure needs on the project. That was talked about. No decision was made. If any of the other board members that sat to that meeting would like to add on to that, they're more than welcome. But that's kind of the gist of what I got out of the meeting.
I think you summarized that correctly. So Service Authority is just an agent for providing water and sewage. So,
Well,
county. This-
yeah, that, I'm sorry, Mr. Wood.
Go ahead.
So that was the take of the Service Authority. I guess I really didn't give my thought, but the Service Authority can't really provide water sewer unless they have the infrastructure to do it with yet. While we're not making the decision today, you know, we're roughly looking for $2.5 million, all right? So those numbers are different, all right, than what you gave us. Thankfully, they're on the better side than what you gave us. I think what I would like to understand better, and this is more for Mr. Hopkins, is I heard someone, I don't think it was you, Mr. Bryant, I think it might have been you saying, you know, the developer's ready to start next month, right? It's going to take time to finish the design on the line, right? It's going to take time to build it. We need to understand those timelines, for one. The other thing, and I think Ms. Tucker alluded to this very well, is while this line might benefit that development, there's potential to benefit a whole lot of other areas in the city. And I'm not saying put a taxing district on them, I'm sorry, the county, on the county. I'd like to understand what those areas are, right? So if we could get some, what other areas might be potentially sewered by this line, all right? So let's look at the full benefit of it and then come back and discuss it. So,
Mr. Chairman, I think he's looking for today, is it a consensus of the board, or do we need to do a vote to look to move, whether we're going to keep in a forward direction with this? I know we heard Mr. Bryant speaking a minute ago, and he's checked in localities around us to be Campbell and Bedford. And I think the piece that's missing in what he brought to us is, did he check the revenues of what those localities are receiving from the new growth that they see in their communities? If you go in Bedford County, I work there 3 days a week. It's amazing. The business development and the residential development is unbelievable. How long it is just incredible. And all of this development is generating taxes for those people. What we're doing here today is trying to create development in our community so we can see some of the same thing and enjoy the same thing, so we not have to continue tax. Myself, these other 4 board members, and all of you all. But in order to do that, and I think your wife spoke a month or 2 ago about Amherst County is nothing changing. You're seeing the same old thing, nothing new. We're here trying to decide, Mr. Bryant, how to do that. And this is how we do it, we have 2 pretty sizable residential developments that is interested. One of the developers is sitting in this room today, and they're taking risk on our community to develop millions of dollars. And we've got to try to do a little bit to help these folks develop in our community so we see a larger tax base, so we don't continue to burden the people. In Bedford and Campbell, if you look out Wards Road, Campbell County is growing from the business growth out there. Bedford is just exploding. And that's the reason they can do what they're doing for their taxpayers, is because they're getting these things offset that we don't have. And that's what the crunch is. So I think that's my feeling. And, I'm definitely open-minded and continue to look forward as to helping these developers do business in our community and help us grow our community so that our tax base will become broader.
I'll follow up on that, Jimmy. Or Mr. Ayers, I don't think there's any doubt that we're not going to do the line. I think we're just trying to figure out the best way to pay for it.
Exactly. And if, I think if it's what he needs is a nod to continue moving forward, to look at those things for us as alternative ways to fund this, I think we need to give the man the direction to go forward.
Find alternative ways to pay for it. Preferably Christmas present. I don't know.
The only thing I'll add is patience is not my strong suit, just like math isn't. And, we keep saying, we gotta wait to do this, we gotta wait to do the other. We've heard of people talk, we can't keep waiting. We gotta make some things happen in this county. And I support everything that Mr. Ayers just said.
The only thing I have to say is I agree with what they said, but at the same time, one must look at the fact that if things do not work out as planned, you do have a $3.5 million bond you have to pay back. And that will either fall on the backs of the citizens or it will fall on the backs of the ratepayers of the county. There's never free lunch. I know a lot of people in this county that have had to extend water lines and sewer lines, not on the scale that this is happening, of course, but they've had to pay it out their own pocket. And I'm sympathetic to that because I've seen my own family members have to do that. So that's something, if you take this on, then you got to be willing to say, hey, this is a speculation we're willing to take a gamble on. We hope that it works out, and very well, hopefully will, but at the same time, it could be something that puts us behind the 8 ball if it doesn't. So that would be my only, I guess, words that I would say as to why I'd be hesitant to, do this project.
Well, I agree with you. I do know that demand for residential units is there across the region. I think the memory care center, I'd be interested in knowing a little bit more, or Do you have someone in mind that's going to operate that? Those are all things that we can get. I believe there were small retail components. Yeah, just some more assurances on that. But I mean, I agree with everything that's been said. But that's what we're elected to do, is to try and make the county better. And I think sometimes you have to say, yeah, we're going to move forward, or no, we're not. And I think that Mr. Morcom has given us every indication that he's planning on moving forward with it. It would be nice to know with the economy and the interest rates and all that, if they are still planning on doing that. So that might be a discussion you want to have with him at some point.
Mr. Taylor, could we have you back here in January and run a pro forma on the county financing it? So I know this was the ad valorem as well as the sewer and water rate adjustments, but looking at the county, I think I'm hearing a scenario of coming out the general fund and the county paying for it. Is that a consensus that we would like for Mr. Taylor to run that analysis as well?
Yes, that's what I heard at the meeting today from the Service Authority, is that we would like to see the county have a part in this. You know, I know that we've already put $1 million up, but yes.
Is that a consensus that we want Mr. Taylor to run that pro forma and run that analysis, where we're funding not just with water sewer rate increases, we're not funding just with this ad valorem and special tax district, but we're looking at...
Sure, to mitigate some of that 7.2 and 8.2 that we showed here. You know, you're talking, to Mr. Martin's point, if you're not looking at 3.5, but rather 2.5 million, that's $200,000 in debt service each year. So that comes straight from the county, or it could be blended between the water sewer rate increases and the county contribution. We can run a pro forma that shows that blended approach.
Because I mean, the way I look at it, I think the county should, you know, of course, we're going to have to maintain the system with the Service Authority, but everyone will benefit from the additional revenue, so to speak, from the project, as opposed to putting it on, the bulk of the people that pay the water rates are in Madison Heights, so that's who will be paying for it. But if you spread it out throughout the whole county, I think it'd be fair, it'd be your constituents have just as much game in it as mine, and so I think that would be a better scenario, at least more equitable.
The entire county will benefit from the overall revenue from
Right.
it. So that's not unfair to question, because, you know, the additional revenue will offset the cost of the business to manage the entire county, not just Madison Heights.
Well, over time, the entire county will benefit greatly.
Yeah, and I might have glazed over that component on page 9. If y'all could go to page 9 just real quickly, then I'll wrap up. So based on the developer's projections on page 9, it's the same units that we showed on the water and sewer rates on the previous page, but what this is saying, based on those same developer-generated units up on lines 1 through 5, the 2 lots that are being developed are on line 8. Their assessed value that the county currently collects on is roughly $368,900. And you're currently collecting 61 pennies on your real estate tax rate on that land. If that goes up over time, according to the way the developer has laid out the projections, that new development on line 9 would be 11.8 million in 2024, 24 million in 25, and so forth. That's the increasing assessed value of the development sitting on top of those lots. So what does that mean? We could skip down to line 18. And this is just incrementally over and above what the general fund currently collects on the real property tax rate. You'd be getting 11.8 million more in assessed value. Divide that by 100, that's 118,000 for your value, multiplied by 61 cents. Just in 24 alone, you'd be collecting $71,000 more on the general fund. That's additive, incremental, over and above what you're currently collecting. And that grows next year to 146, 242, 340, and you've already eclipsed that $200,000 or $280,000 debt service level. So the county, again, could potentially cover all or some of that debt service through county contributions for specifically to the Gateway project. Additionally, up above, like we were talking about earlier, going back to the utility service district concept, this is just run on a 10-penny impact, what that could generate just on the utility service district. So again, you don't have to pull the trigger on it if you create it, and it sounds like you may or may not want it, but it's just an additional potential revenue source for consideration that we talked it through with legal counsel on, so.
Yeah, the way I see it, it begins paying for itself for between years 2 and 3, really, or at least pays the debt service.
If it hits the mark. If it gets delayed, the county is obviously coming out of current revenue sources to cover that until the project gets up to speed, so to speak. And I'm sorry for glancing over that earlier.
So I have a question regarding the EDA. Does the EDA, this is a question you can ask them, Mr. Bryant, if they have any ability to contribute to this project? That would be a question that I'd like answered. And then I guess the other thing would be, and I don't think we can, but what type of assurances could we get? I mean, we're putting a large amount of money into the project, or we may. So what type of assurances can we get from the developer of the project, if any, that this will come online? You know, I know that we did this with property we've owned, say, for instance, Phelps Road School and some other things that we've held them to account, but I don't think there's a lot we can probably do legally or that's binding.
I would need to talk with Mark about the conversations that he's had with different people, but I know that there are a couple of different scenarios that you can put together. Part of the service district idea was so that if worse comes to worse, the developer's bearing as much of the pain as you can make him. But there are secondary things that you can do to have him kick in more of the money or be on the hook. It's just that the amount of hook that he's going to be on for having a performance agreement, it's going to vary. We don't have a huge amount. I guess putting in a sewer line is a huge amount of leverage in a way, or because, as you say, in many places they just wouldn't even. Many localities would not want to do a pro rata type situation like we're willing to do for this. But I would suggest that we talk to him, but that's as far as I would make any promises at this point.
Okay,
Doesn't sit
thank you.
right with me.
It was just a question.
No, I'm thinking about it. So we've got an investor who wants to come and invest in our county. There's certain things that we've got to do to make it viable. And then on top of that, instead of saying, gee, thanks for doing this for us, we want to tie him to some type of an agreement?
I was just asking if there's anything
Yeah,
to do,
I mean,
because you have to protect the assets of the county as well as the taxpayers. So, I mean, that's where my allegiance is to. It's not to the developers, it's to the people that elect me, and it will always be. Yes, go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's not unusual, Ms. Tucker, to do that, but because, I mean, the fact of the matter is, if the county goes and builds the sewer line,
Right. Which we've been needing to do for decades.
sure.
Yeah.
And to open that land up for development, we've built the sewer line. Well, if that development doesn't happen, we're still paying for the sewer line. Yet, that land's still gonna be open for development. So if they don't do it, okay, it's definitely open for development. So it's, we're setting ourselves up for good things, I think. So, but I think that's what Mr. Pugh was getting to is, regardless, if the development doesn't happen, we put the line in, we've got to pay for it. Over 20 years.
My feeling, that area down there, as I said several meetings ago when this started coming forward, if it's any area that we need to look at development right on the hill above what's going on in downtown Lynchburg, it is that particular area on that 210 strip. So, and I feel like the developer is definitely having to put in money with what they're doing thus far just to get preliminary plans and whatnot done. So, I mean, that's...
Well, I think you Go ahead, Mr. Bryant.
I do have one question. I think I have some clear guidance on what to do and help work with Mr. Taylor on. One thing that I'm trying to figure out whether or not we should continue to explore is this special ad valorem utility service district. Do you want us to pursue that and have that as an option? As Mr. Taylor said, it's a switch. You can flip on and off. You don't have to do it. You can. Do we want to package that up into this deal that comes back to you next time?
I would like to see it as a separate option away from everything else, just for those 2 lots. So, yes,
And,
my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. We ought to have every option.
yeah, that'd be fine, but my question on that is, that, if that was the case, then you would have to finance it through the service authority, or would,
Irregardless, the debt financing is going through the service authority, because the service authority they are set up to own and maintain the assets. So
It
the
doesn't
revenue
matter.
bond structure is already in place there.
But that special district would have to be a,
You're just drawing a line.
but we're basically taxing their real estate higher. The service authority can't do that, the board has to.
That's right. I think it's potentially, and Mr. Lockaby can step in here and correct me or not, but I think the way it's been done historically in other localities is that gets put onto the water and sewer bill for folks in that district, and it gets funneled through back to the county.
I mean, we can look at it. I honestly think in this instance, it's not really gonna be that huge of a benefit, because if they don't develop it at a certain rate, it's taxed at $380,000 now. It's assessed at $380,000 now. I mean, what's 10 more cent on the 71 cent? That's gonna generate what? Not enough to pay for the debt, all right?
No, but it helps share. I think just the concept behind the service district is to share. So you have some skin in the game, for lack of a better way of putting it. Said another way, I think, to your point, Mr. Martin, and we were asked to identify potential other sources. Politically, I'm not pushing this one way or the other. I'm just trying to make sure I play devil's advocate and approach this in a thorough manner.
Sure.
To your point earlier, if that land sits up there, you've put in your lines and you're paying 20 years on your infrastructure, you said that it could be potentially developed by somebody else. Does that presume that the current developers and owners sell it to somebody else to allow that to happen, or how does that work? The service district is the mechanism in place to say, you're either in or you're out. And you can dial it down to a penny if that makes more sense and it's more palatable. To Mike's point earlier, you can go down the other agreements avenues, but they get sticky and have other unintended consequences, whereas this is the straightest, sort of simplest way to tie it together and make both parties sort of have skin in the game, because the county board, at the end of the day, is the one making the decision that has ultimate control. Are we going to charge this or not? Or are we going to pull it out of the general fund or wherever? But if you want some other developer to come in, I guess they'd have to sell it, and I guess that's...
I'm not saying I want another developer to come in. I want to see it developed.
Right, yes, sir.
Especially if we...
But not sit on it either.
Right,
Especially if you go through the expense of putting the infrastructure in. Yes, sir.
Brian, you've got your,
I do. We'll come back with some options.
all right, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Taylor.
Yes, sir.
Appreciate it.
Thank you all.
Thank you, board. All right, next we'll move on to county administrator reports. I can go ahead and take the first one, Mr. Bryan. It's a board and commission. It's the Parks and Recreation vacancy. Ms. Follett has asked to be reappointed to that board. I don't believe we have any other candidates. And so Mrs. Follett sits in my district, and if there's no one else wishing to speak, I would make the motion we reappoint Ms. Follett to the Parks and Rec Board. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Motion carries. All right, Mr. Brown, I'll let you take the rest of it.
Okay, great. The next item is letting you know quarterly update on boards, commissions, committees. Mike Russell, who has served many, many years for the Economic Development Authority, and Dan Sweeney. Mike Russell's at-large, Dan Sweeney's District 5. Their terms expire January the 18th of 2023. We understand that Mr. Russell will likely not ask to be reappointed to the EDA, so this is for information only to assist you in recruiting efforts to fill the vacating seats.
All right, Mr. Russell's at large, I believe, yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you. All right, next we have the county administrator, HR regulation.
Great. I'm going to ask Linda Warner to come up, and she's going to explain the regulation based on the changes that were recently implemented due to the switch from the 24 to 48, from a 24 to 72 EMS schedule. Ms. Warner.
First, I want to apologize for the disruption I created when I came in late. My phone decided to take on a life of its own, and I struggled to turn it off, and I apologize for that. I was at a regional HR meeting in Danville, that's why I was a few minutes late, and I wanted to mention to you all that one of the staff persons from a neighboring jurisdiction talked about the buzz we had created with her EMS and firefighter staff with our 24/72 switch.
I love it.
I
That's
think
great.
what we hope to accomplish is being accomplished out there, and I was tickled to hear that. Because of that change, our EMS staff will be working 8 shifts a month instead of 10, and so our current leave accrual is based on the schedule that our employees work. And so in discussion with the public safety director, we needed to reduce the monthly accrual for leave for the 24-hour employees. And we have reduced it a comparable percentage to the decrease in the number of shifts per month they work. And then at the same time, whenever I make a change, I try to clean up any past stuff that was here before I arrived. Our old schedule was based on 10-minute increments, and we switched several years ago to 15-minute increments. And so I bumped the leave accrual for the communications officers, who are our 12-hour shift employees, up 1/10 of a point so that it would go to the nearest quarter hour, which is 8.5. And then I also combined the columns for 8 and 10 because they're identical, just as a cleanup. And the county administrator has the ability to make this change, but he has to report it to you all in a public meeting to give you the opportunity, if you have any questions or concerns, to do that.
Thank you, Ms. Warner. Does anyone have any questions for Ms. Warner? If not, I'll go ahead and take care. I'll make the motion that the board accept the county administrator initiated change to the vacation and sick leave accrual charts in the HR regulation as presented. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, next, I had brought this up on December 20th. We have a scheduled meeting. I'd asked if you all would like to cancel that meeting. It's the week of Christmas. I'll be out of town, so if you have any problems with that, please speak now, or I want to make a motion that we cancel it.
I think it's a brilliant idea.
All right. So I will go ahead and make the motion. We cancel the December 20th Board of Supervisors meeting. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Motion carries. And then we have the, go ahead, Mr. Bryan's project status report.
Oh, no, thank you very much. Not a lot of new to report, but if you have any questions, again, I update your project status report once a month. It's found in your packet. So do you have any questions for me regarding the update?
I see no questions. Thank you, Mr. Bryant. Next, we have County Attorney's report. Mr. Lockaby.
The county attorney reports that he would like everybody on the board to have a Merry Christmas, and thank you very much for having me here, and appreciate being able to help you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas to you too, Mr. Lockaby. Appreciate it. All right, next we have liaison and committee reports. We have the Parks and Rec Board. Mr. Martin, do you have anything to?
Yeah, just very quickly, that board continues to meet monthly, and they're doing great things in the community. Their Halloween Spooktacular at Coolwell Rec had over 250 children. Basketball numbers are at an all-time high with 300 registered for that. I believe the senior luncheons are being well attended, 315 at the last one. And they're starting to look out longer term. You know, they looked at the CIP and provided their input to me on what their priorities were, and also excited about that Parks and Rec master plan that's coming up. So it's a good group, and thank you for reappointing Ms. Follett.
Thank you, Mr. Martin. The planning commission, I sit on the planning commission, we had a meeting, but it was very uneventful. We had one public hearing scheduled, but it was pulled off the docket. A very short meeting, nothing of consequence to report to you. So everybody, it seems Tyler is doing a great job filling in the needs of Jeremy's position, and we're pleased to have him. So, all right. Next, we have departmental reports. We'll have the Amherst County Department of Social Services. Jason Mader will come up and give us a synopsis of what they've been doing the last year. Welcome.
Afternoon. I'm well aware I'm the last person scheduled to speak today, so I'm going to try to make it brief and to the point. So if anything jumps out at you that I don't cover thoroughly, please just go ahead and ask. I think you guys should have a handout with all the slides on it. My name is Jason Metter. For those of you that don't know me, I've been the Director of Social Services since July 1st of this year. With me in the room, as well as my executive team, I've been Administrative Services Manager, Robin McFadden, and my Family Services Manager, Drew Coleman. All right, we're just going to go over real quick our mission here. Our mission is to offer timely, appropriate, quality services to individuals and families in order to promote self-sufficiency and to protect children and adults. I took the time to list some of the services we offer. You may not know or understand all the different functions we have as a community, so I wanted to put all that on there. As you can see, it's pretty long list, but it's not by any means comprehensive. If anybody wants me to discuss any of those particularly, let me know.
Is that broke, Jeremy?
It's broken. Yes, sir.
I didn't get a page.
There you go. You can use this one.
Thanks.
Matter of fact, that is yours, or you can use this one.
Well, I'll take the one you didn't write on.
All right.
Mr. Pugh probably doesn't need one. He's our liaison, knows everything we've been dealing with.
Oh, yeah.
All right, next I threw in an organizational chart just so you guys can kind of get an idea of our structure and staffing. As of December 1st, when I printed this out, we had filled about 39 positions out of the 48 that were authorized. That's pretty typical. I think we have since hired 2 family service specialists, 1 benefits program worker, and they're going to start throughout this month. We've had a lot of retirements, turnovers, and other things going on, especially since I took over, including our assistant director passing away back in September, that have kind of put us behind a little bit. But I really do think we're on the right track here. Just look at the different vacancies we have. The family services specialist is pretty much going to be the hardest ones to find, I think. We do have an opening right now, and I looked at it this morning, there was no applicants. That's a mandated bachelor's degree requirement by the state. We honestly don't pay enough to warrant that, I don't think, but we can't really do a lot about it, so it's hard to find people to apply. The BP benefits program admin staff is a little less hard to find people, but it's harder generally to keep them. Some of the lowest paid positions in the county, and probably much the state. But like I said, we're on the right track. We hover around a 8-person vacancy about all year, so we're trying to work on that. All right, the next couple slides are just going to be charts that will show you how our department is performed metrics-wise in comparison with the state as a whole. All Level 2 agencies in the state, what are considered medium-sized agencies, the Piedmont region as a whole, and then Level 2 agencies within the Piedmont region. All right, we got SNAP applications processed on time. We have a higher percentage than all of the state metrics on here and the Piedmont region. We met their goal into that at 99.4. Our target is 97%. All these are going to be the same thing. So you look at the top, that's going to be the target, which is given to us by the state, and then what we actually performed at. So TANF applications we processed. Target was 97. We are 0.03% off the goal, but you know, we're pretty comparable with the rest of the people they measured here, and really that's due to minimum staffing we've had. Medical assistance applications, that's 97%. We're right at 95. We're slightly below target with this, but that seems to be the issue historically. One of the reasons we're kind of below on that is the central processing unit, and the state will send us stuff that's already late or very close to being late before we get it, and there's really not a lot of time to turn it around. Child care applications processed on time. Our target's 97. We're at 98.4, exceeded the target. Family services, CPS referrals closed before the due date. Target's 85%. You can see we're less than that at 78.6, but if you compare that with everybody else, we're well outperforming them. The state average is only 41.8, and Piedmont's 59.9%. CFSR timeliness, first contact with victim during CPS complaints, that's 95% target. We're at 89.1, but we're still higher than most people in the region or the state. A lot of times that's just because we can't find people's addresses. They don't have the correct address on file, which is a pretty common thing here in rural counties like this. A lot of turnover too with a family service specialist. But like I said, we're pretty comparable or more than the rest of the state, so we're still doing pretty well. Foster care, target's 95% for monthly foster care visits. We are at 98.2. We're the highest measured percentage in this group. Monthly foster care visits in residence, that's a target of more than 50%. We're at 66.5. We're about average with most of the Piedmont Level 2 region agencies. Congregate care placements, that one's a little different. The target is going to be less than 16%. So we're at 15.4, so we did meet target with that. Kinship care placements, target is more than 25%. We didn't meet target with that at almost 17%, but you can see that, again, we're outperforming the state as a whole and the region as a whole, even though a big reason, just to touch on this one, really no viable kinship options a lot of times for these foster care kids, and it's always the option, the preferred method is to get them with a family member, and a lot of times family members are just not able to take them or viable. You know, grandma's now just as bad as the mom we took them from a lot of times, so we're working with what we have. Just pulled the local profile report as well for you guys to look at. This is an auto-generated report that comes out from the state. It's not necessarily 100% accurate or up to date, but it's pretty close. This is showing the end of the first quarter of fiscal year 23. It's basically going to break down some of the statistics and figures that may be interesting to the board or the community. And I'll just point out some highlights in the next couple slides. So this one, the main things you need to look at is the population total for Amherst County is right around 31,667 according to this report. Out of those people, 3,435 are living in poverty. That's about 11% of the population here, according to the state. Right now, the poverty line is $13,590 per person income, and then for a family of four, it bumps up to $27,750, and that's where they're getting these numbers from. If you want to take this home, you can compare our numbers to the Piedmont region as a whole and the state. The next slide, that's just showing you our ALICE numbers. ALICE is asset limited income, constrained, and employed. Pretty busy slide with not a lot on it, honestly. Next slide. Not a whole lot substantial in this besides pointing out that we have about 2,400 people that are under 65 and uninsured in the county, which directly impacts us. That's about 10% total. Next, just want to kind of show you, this is a pretty interesting slide, non-marital births in Amherst County. We had about 671 through this particular time period, which is 42% of the population. Teen births was about 67, which is 9.8% rate. And then the most interesting thing on the slide, 29% of children living in Amherst County come from a single-parent household. That's a lot lower than I thought it was going to be, honestly. This is just another couple graphs that I pulled up. It's going to show you the same things we were looking at before, but it's going to give you an idea of our process benefits numbers. Again, we're meeting goals that we're supposed to. And processing, you see how many applications and stuff we're processing with the minimum staff we have and how much customer service actually goes through our department on a weekly basis or a monthly basis. Next slide. The main thing I want to get out of this is 9,739% of the residents, which is 31% of the population, receive some kind of assistance, whether it be SNAP, TANF, or Medicaid in state fiscal year 21. And if you were to add the foster care, CPS, APS, contacts we have, that's going to jump up to about 10,492, and that's about 33% of the whole population that we service in some way through our department. This is just going to be further breakdown of our family services. Show you, how many CPS referrals we had, APS referrals, stuff like that. Maintaining pretty consistent throughout the last 10 years. And the last slide I'm going to brief. It's not a busy slide, but the main thing we're going to get out of this is our budget. We as a department, I just want to make sure everybody knows, we ask for the bare minimum that's required by the federal and the state. We don't really ask for a whole lot beyond that. If you look at our numbers here, only 1.7% of our total budget comes from the local money. That's about I'd say $1,525,000. That's actually down $20 total from last year, and we turned that into about $93 million of revenue in the county. That's actually up over $15 million from last year.
Mr. Mayor, can I ask you a quick question? Based upon the number that you said of people that we had here in our county that were getting some type of assistance, and then the $93 million number, so every man, woman, and child is getting approximately $30,000, something, about $30,000 being spent on them?
You could,
And that sounds like a big amount of money, but when you look at Medicaid and you look at everything it costs to keep a person going, I guess it's, y'all are doing a pretty good job with your money. I'd
right,
say.
like I said, we're mandated to spend this money from the federal and state government. My job is just to be a good steward of the money, make sure we're not being too overly excessive with it. And I think, like I said, I think we're only spending 1.7% of our whole budget is local money, so I think we're doing a pretty good job with it.
Well, your predecessor ran a tight ship. Looks like you're doing the same.
Yeah, we're big shoes to fill for sure. But we got a good team building here, and like I said, we've had a lot going on the last 6 months, but we're getting on the right way, right track, so.
Mr. Marks is keeping them straight down there.
Breaks this down every month, so.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate everything you do. It's a tough task, and I know some of those positions are hard to fill, and we've been dealing with that, but thank you for what you do, and appreciate you coming out here today.
Sure.
Next, we have citizen comment. Anyone wishing to speak, please come forward. Seeing none, we'll go ahead and close citizen comments, and we'll go to matters from members of the board. Mr. Wade?
Nothing, sir.
Mrs. Tucker?
I don't have anything.
Mr. Ayers? No, sir. Mr. Martin?
No, sir.
All right, I have one thing. I received a call from the the Nelson Board recently, the board chairman, and he was seeing if maybe there was a possibility we could meet in regards to the potential agricultural site in northern Amherst County. I told him that I would talk to the board members, try to get some dates available, see if we can meet in January sometime. So we could do that now, or you could email those to Mr. Bryant, or we could pan that out here today. It's up to you all. Because then we're going to have to run it by them and try to see when they're available and so forth, so.
Mrs. Freeman did put a calendar together. These are dates that, if we hosted, these are dates that our board meeting here is open. If you would like, first, if you'd like to do it, and second, if you want us to offer hosting.
Is the county closed January 16th for Martin Luther King Day? Because that's where they're open all day.
Yes, ma'am.
So this is the availability of this room.
I'd be fine just emailing a few dates to
Okay.
Mr. Bryant.
All right, that's-
Take that approach.
All right, that's fine. All right, is that fine? Just try to we'll get something together, and then, Mr. Bryan, you can reach out to the Nelson County Board or the county administrator and try to get this straightened out. So, just wanted to let you all know that I had received that call, and we can try to set up a meeting if that's your prerogative. All right, since there's no other matters from the board, I will entertain a motion for adjournment.
So moved.
Motion on the floor by Mr. Martin. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.